I didn't need to shout. That's what they never understood. Shouting is for people who want to be heard. I wanted to be believed. All I did was listen. Long enough for people to relax. Long enough for them to confess things they thought were harmless. Jealousies they laughed about. Resentments they swore were temporary. Private comparisons they insisted didn't mean anything. I stored every word carefully, like fragile glass. Not to throw, just to place where it would crack on its own. People imagine manipulation as force, threats, seduction, violence. They're wrong. The cleanest damage happens when you step back and let people stare at themselves through someone else's eyes. When you let silence do the accusing. I didn't plan for fists to fly. I didn't plan for blood. I only planned for doubt, for the kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. and makes you reread old messages with new meanings. By the time they compared notes they were never meant to share, the story had already written itself. They just acted it out. When it was over, they called me evil. I didn't argue. I just wondered why none of them noticed how eagerly they destroyed each other without me lifting a hand. I met them separately, which helped. People open faster when they think they're special. There was Marcus, insecure in a quiet way. The kind of man who smiled while mentally ranking himself against every other man in the room. He pretended he didn't care about status, about money, about who looked more confident. He cared, desperately. Then Elena, sharp and observant, but hungry to be chosen. She said she hated drama, which usually means she knows how to recognize it, but not how to avoid it. She watched people closely, especially other women. She compared without meaning to. And Jonah, emotional, impulsive, proud of his honesty. He liked to say whatever he felt because it made him feel authentic. He never asked whether his feelings were accurate, only whether they were intense. I didn't introduce them to each other right away. I let them orbit me independently, each convinced they had a clearer picture than the others. That's important. Triangles collapse if all sides think they're equal. With Marcus, I asked questions that sounded like admiration. Do you ever feel like people underestimate you? He said yes before I finished the sentence. I nodded like it made sense. I let him talk about Jonah, how loud he was, how reckless, how people mistook volume for strength. I didn't disagree. I just listened. With Elena, I mirrored concern. Do you ever feel like men confuse attention with respect? She laughed. Then she talked about Marcus, how kind he seemed, but how kindness often hid weakness. She said it gently, like she didn't want to sound cruel. I let her believe that mattered. With Jonah, I offered validation. You're honest. That scares people. He liked that. He talked about Marcus's passivity, Elena's calculating calm. He said he trusted me because I didn't judge. I told him honesty always comes with a cost. He took that as a compliment. I never lied outright. That's sloppy. I only repeated truths out of context, slightly rearranged. Marcus knew Elena questioned his confidence. Elena knew Jonah dismissed her boundaries. Jonah knew Marcus resented him. None of that was false. What mattered was timing. I let insecurities ripen. I let silences stretch. When someone asked me directly, what did they say? I answered carefully. I don't think they meant it that way. Which is a sentence that plants a landmine without detonating it. Soon, they started adjusting their behavior. Not because I told them to, but because comparison is a disease. Marcus grew tense. Elena grew watchful. Jonah grew louder, more performative, as if volume could erase doubt. They thought they were responding to each other. They were responding to themselves. By the time I brought them into the same room, the triangle was already tight enough to snap. Once they were together, I did less. That's the mistake amateurs make. Thinking control requires constant input. Marcus noticed how Jonah took up space. Jonah noticed how Elena laughed more quietly around Marcus. Elena noticed how Marcus watched Jonah when he spoke. None of that needed explanation. Humans narrate everything on their own. I applied pressure with absence. When Marcus texted, I waited. When Jonah asked for reassurance, I changed the subject. When Elena hinted at discomfort, I acknowledged it without solving it. Discomfort thrives when it feels seen, but unresolved. They began comparing notes without realizing it. Did she say that to you? That's not how she explained it to me. Every conversation sharpened the edges. They thought they were uncovering the truth. They were constructing it. Jealousy doesn't need invention. It needs permission. Jonah confronted Marcus first, loudly, accusing him of undermining, of passive aggression. Marcus denied it, which only confirmed Jonah's suspicion. Denial always sounds like strategy to someone who already believes you're lying. Elena watched this unfold and recalibrated. She began testing loyalty with small disclosures, harmless things. I'm not sure I trust him. I feel like he looks down on me. Each confession was a probe. Each reaction was data. I never corrected misunderstandings. Correction creates unity. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly Jonah's volatility would escalate once he felt excluded. He started drinking more, talking faster, interpreting neutral glances as insults. Marcus, sensing threat, withdrew further, which Jonah interpreted as guilt. Elena tried to manage both, which exhausted her. She grew sharper, more cutting. People become cruel when they feel unheard. The night it turned physical, I wasn't even in the room. That part still surprises people when they hear it later. They imagine me orchestrating every movement like a puppeteer. The truth is uglier. Once jealousy is activated, it runs on its own. Jonah accused Marcus of spreading lies. Marcus accused Jonah of intimidation. Voices rose. Someone shoved. A glass broke. Blood followed. It was chaotic, messy, human. Afterward, they called me in fragments. 3 different versions of the same story, each centered on betrayal. I responded the same way to all of them. Calm concern. No blame. No solutions. That's when Elena noticed the pattern. She replayed conversations, compared phrasing, realized that the things she thought were private had been reflected back at her through other mouths. She confronted me carefully, as if stepping on glass. Did you tell them what I said? I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it. I asked, why would that matter if they didn't already feel that way? That question broke something open. Not guilt, clarity. She saw the shape of it, the triangle, the echo, the way information moved without ever being distorted, only repositioned. She started asking the others different questions, the kind that don't accuse but reveal. And slowly, the focus shifted from each other to me. Exposure doesn't arrive with drama. It arrives with quiet agreement. A shared realization that the common denominator has been sitting comfortably in the middle the whole time. Elena confronted me first, with Marcus present. Jonah joined later, suspicious but listening. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They laid out timelines, compared language, reconstructed moments I thought had dissolved into memory. I listened. I always do. They wanted denial, tears, a confession that made them feel righteous. I gave them something else, honesty without apology. I told them I never forced them to say anything, that I never lied about their words, that everything I shared had been theirs first. I asked them why they trusted me with their insecurities if they believed themselves to be so secure. Jonah called me manipulative. Marcus called me calculated. Elena called me dangerous. All accurate. None of them comforting. What unsettled them most wasn't what I'd done. It was how little effort it had taken. How willingly they'd handed me leverage in the form of confession. How fast intimacy had turned into ammunition. They wanted remorse. I offered reflection. I said I'd been curious. Curious how quickly people externalize blame instead of sitting with discomfort. Curious how jealousy needs only a mirror to become destructive. That didn't satisfy them. It never does. They cut me out collectively, which felt appropriate. Triangles don't survive once named. I watched their alliance form in real time, fragile, bruised, necessary. They needed a villain to stabilize the wreckage. I didn't interfere. Weeks later, I heard they were still unraveling things I'd never touched. Old resentments. New suspicions. Damage doesn't reverse just because the catalyst is gone. Sometimes people ask if I regret it, if I feel guilty. I tell them the truth. Guilt requires believing you did something to someone. I didn't do anything to them. I created space and let them move. They exposed me because it was easier than admitting how eager they were to compare, compete, and confess. If that makes me evil, fine. But evil usually hides. I never did.